What's up, Who Dat Nation? Welcome in to Saints Daily, your home for everything to do with the black and gold. My name is Tim, and we are finally at draft week, and with that, there is just a ton of rumors flying about, and I want to talk about some of those rumors, but before we do that, I want to get into Alvin Kamara, and the discussion that has to be had about potentially moving on from him and what that would look like. If the Saints don't do anything with his contract right now, he's at about 10.5 million, just under 10.5 million in cap hit for 2026. And with the 2027 cap hit, he's at 16.26 million. I think most people can agree that that contract for both years is probably not going to stay as it is, whether it's moving on from him as a player or a restructure, whether it could be just a straight up pay cut. Anything really could happen at this point in time. I think 16.26 million for Alvin Kamara at this point in his career in 2027 is just too much. The 2027 cap is not that bad right now. It's actually a really favorable position, especially for the Saints with Mickey Loomis, but you have to factor in contract extensions for guys like Chris Olave who are not signed in 2027 at this point in time, who figure to probably be a relatively large cap hit, especially if he does continue to ascend and maybe not sign a contract until next offseason, where maybe he has another second team all pro type year, and now that 33, 35 million dollar contract range is absolutely attainable, if not in the rearview mirror, depending on what Puka gets. JSN already reset the market. Chris Olave could cost a lot, and that 16.26 that you're seeing right now for Alvin Kamara in 2027 just might be a little bit too rich for this team to eat, for lack of a better way of saying it, especially with Achan on the roster. I wouldn't expect anything to happen until after the draft. I think if the Saints don't draft a running back whatsoever, I think they really do work with Kamara, get him back on some sort of contract that just makes sense for everybody involved. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the Saints still move on from him regardless of drafting a running back or not. The only thing that would make sense to do in terms of cutting Kamara, because he's already basically said he's not playing for another team. So if he's not going to leave the Saints and play for another team, you can't trade him. So you're just gonna have to cut him, and the only way to cut him that makes sense is post June 1st. What that looks like is a savings of 376,000, so negligible. Essentially, it's the negligible savings in 2026. He's got a dead cap hit of 10 million at that point in time. His savings in 2027 though are 11.1 million. So that's 16.26 million that I just said in 2027. 11 million is savings and then only 5.1 million in dead cap. So you do get a lot of that money back, which again, just talking about the Chris Olave contract alone, you may end up needing to ensure this team is set up for long term. And then after that, in 2028 through 2030, you do still incur a dead cap hit. So 5.1 again in 2028, and then 29 and 30, you're at about negative 2 million each year. In this offseason, the Saints did what's called the 50% rule. If you're really interested in that, I would encourage you to look into it. I have tried explaining that on this podcast a few times. I've had to re-record this section each time because it's a very interesting way to use the cap, and it's one of the reasons why Kai Hartley is so coveted by this team and somebody who I really think should be able to take over the GM responsibilities when Mickey does leave. Regardless, the team was able to convert 10.15 million to reduce his cap number by 8 million in some change. But his dead money does increase in 2027 because of this move. So it does make 2027 a lot more interesting. Right now, there's absolutely no news on Kamara. There's nothing that I'm seeing. It just sounds like everybody's preparing for him to come back. Kellen Moore has been super complimentary of him. Uh, Moore was also super complimentary of Derek Carr, though. So who knows what's going to happen? Kamara might just end up retiring. The team just might move on from him. Or, as a Saints fan, already losing to Mario Davis, potentially Cam Jordan. I just want him back. I just want to see him play. I want to see 41 play again. I don't want last year to be what Saints fans remember from him in his time here. It was a down year. He got hurt. He's just not as good as he's been, and I think he still has a lot left in the tank. I don't really think he's somebody who's going to decline a lot with age. I think just the offensive line let him down, the play calling may have let him down, and then things really started to pick up when Shuck came in. He got hurt, and things just went off the rails. Running backs 5 through 10 at that point were essentially who the Saints were going with. So I hope that everything does end up working out with him. But again, we'll just keep you posted whenever I hear anything whatsoever. I'll make sure to bring it up here. Again, just hoping that he does stay with the team, though. I would be excited to see him with the Saints in 2026 and in the future, splitting carries with Achan, kind of being the Ingram to the Kamara that is going to be Achan moving forward. I want to pivot real quick, take a look at who the experts have the Saints picking at pick 8 and a few trade ups over the last week or so. Again, we're finally coming up here towards draft time. It's just a couple days away. Very, very interested to see who is right, what's going to end up happening. But over the last week, since April 13th, I was reviewing a few mock drafts. And surprisingly, at least to me, because it wasn't a name that I expected to see, the number one mock draft, mock drafted player picked by the Saints at 8 was actually Mansour Delane, the cornerback out of LSU. I saw on NFL.com, ESPN, CBS Sports, and then for anybody who does fantasy football, Fantasy Pros also does a lot of mock drafts where all four of them ended up getting Mansour Delane. ESPN was Jordan Reed. It wasn't Mel Kiper, but it's still a pretty interesting thing that there is four mock drafts that have the Saints going with Mansour Delane. It's just not a name that I've seen linked to the Saints too much outside of from Saints fans who are also LSU fans and want it to happen. But it does make sense. There is an Alontae Taylor sized hole on this defense, and I personally have been filling that hole in with Caleb Downs. But especially with the Dexter Lawrence trade, Caleb Downs being available at 8 might not be something that you're seeing. And the reason why I'm saying especially with the Dexter Lawrence trade is because I previously would have had the Giants going wide receiver at pick 5. Sonny Styles is also a popular pick, but he might be picked earlier. I think with the Giants getting pick 10, it opens up the ability for them to go Downs in pick 5 and then end up getting wide receiver at pick 10. I think they're probably okay with any of the top 3 wide receivers, and there is a good chance that Tyson or Tate will be available at pick 10. Very, very interested, very concerned as a Caleb Downs truther that this is now a potential reality that the Giants will go safety at pick 5. If there is one head coach in the NFL who can really speak to how important it is to have an elite safety, it's John Harbaugh. It's somebody who has coached teams with elite safeties and has had teams without elite safeties, right? It is somebody who brought in some very high profile free agents, that safety, who didn't work out. And if you get somebody coming in who pretty much anyone who worked with him has said he is going to be the smartest guy in your defense day one, the moment you draft him. That is something that this Giants defense can use, and he'll be the captain, he'll be the leader, he'll be the smartest person, he'll be the quarterback of the defense. That's why I want him on the Saints, but if you can't get him and you got to fill that Alontae Taylor size hole with somebody, Mansour Delane is a great, great consolation prize. Um, I'm personally a little bit higher on McCoy, pending his physical, pending his ability to stay healthy in the NFL. His 2024 tape was, if you listen to any expert, and I agree, it is better than anybody's 2025 tape. But Delane is a very close second, and I am very, very okay with taking the guy without the ACL injury who did actually play football last year, rather than the guy who is coming off an ACL and didn't play football at all in 2025. The second player tied Ruben Bain and Carnell Tate at 3. It's important to call out whether or not you actually like Mel Kiper, but Mel Kiper and Chad Reuter, who are two of the more popular mock drafters, have Ruben Bain going to the Saints. Mel Kiper, April 18th article, and Chad Reuter and on an April 17th article. And then Carnell Tate, PFF has the Saints getting Carnell Tate as of April 20th. Fox Sports' Joel Klatt, who's again another really good mock drafter, April 20th as well, has the Saints going with Carnell Tate. David Bailey and Caleb Downs are both tied at, I guess that would be 4 and 5, or yeah, 4 and 5 with two mock drafters. Adam Rank with NFL.com being the main one with David Bailey, and then Bleacher Report and two separate ones has Caleb Downs going to the Saints. And then we got Jordan Tyson and Denzel Boston, surprisingly, as the guys bringing up the rear at one each. So just based on what the experts are saying, very, very defensive heavy. Really only Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson being the ones that realistically would be picked at pick 8 with all the mock drafts that I was seeing. As always, very interested in what you all think in these mock drafts and what you're seeing these experts mocking to the Saints. Usually, I think the experts don't have a good pulse on the Saints. I think nobody really did under Sean Payton. But to be honest with you, if you look at the past few drafts since Payton left, even with Dennis Allen, these mocks seem to be relatively accurate. Mocks seem to be more accurate the earlier you pick as well, which may play into it a little bit. But definitely think that the Saints might be going defense in round 1, which I agree with as the strategy. And then I think rounds 2 through 3 are going to be super interesting on day 2. I think this is a team that has a lot of capability to go offense the rest of the way after they go defense in the first round. Side note, I'm starting to think that the Saints may be interested in trading back into the first round. Just seems to have a lot of trade conversations and a lot of things going on. So I'm curious if the Saints do go defense first round, maybe they trade back up into the late first round. Maybe the Dolphins trade pick 30. Saints can maybe get another wide receiver at pick 30 rather than waiting at pick 42. Sometimes, as we went over yesterday, Mickey Loomis just can't help himself, and he's got to trade up for his guy. So interested, again, as always, on what would happen if the Saints do stay put. And at this point in time, that might be an if. The Saints and Cardinals, as reported by John Siegler with the Saints Wire, Saints and Cardinals may they might be in trade conversations for the Saints to trade up to pick 3. Now, it's important to note that these rumors were coming out of a Arizona Cardinals beat writers radio show. I'm gonna get his name wrong, but Johnny Venerable, I believe, is the guy's name. Johnny said that the Saints currently are saying that they will trade pick 8, 42, and 73. So their first 3 rounds to trade up to pick 3 with the Arizona Cardinals. So there would not be any 2027 draft capital in exchange. Venerable's exact quote was, "I think that's the preference for these teams. In fact, I know it." I don't want the Saints to trade up. I don't want the Saints to feel like they're one player away, trade up and get probably Arvell Reese or David Bailey, whoever the Jets don't pick. That's my guess is who they're after. I see both players, their ceiling is high. David Bailey can be a game-wrecking defensive end. Arvell Reese could be a Micah Parsons level hybrid linebacker end. They both also could not work out. And this team just crushed day 2 of the draft last year. This scouting department, historically, in my opinion, does a very good job in rounds 2 through 5. And trading away pick 42 and pick 73, your second and third round picks it makes no sense to me. So personally, I think this is a smokescreen. I think there's probably been conversations and there's been a value that has been sent over as a feeler, and 4273 as well as pick 8 was that value that was sent over and it got leaked. If you remember, literally 24, 48 hours ago, the news was that the Chiefs were in talks for pick 3. So to me, this is a leverage play by Arizona to get the Chiefs to up their trade value. Because if the Chiefs are in love with either Bailey or Reese or both, and they're okay with getting either or, and they don't want to risk losing one of those players, this is absolutely the best way for the Cardinals to force them to up their value and up what they're giving them to allow for the Cardinals to get a little bit more trade capital. Nothing works better than sparking fear that you're gonna miss your guy. And I think this is hopefully the Saints with their reputation of trading up after they identify somebody. I think that's probably what's going on. I hope that's what's going on. I said it yeah, on yesterday's show. I'm starting to really love the idea of trading down, unless Caleb Downs is available, but I don't think he's going to be available. So I'm loving the idea of seeing if the Cowboys want to give us pick 12 or the Dolphins maybe want to trade up and we can and the Saints can get pick 11. I would love that idea of trading down a few picks and getting an extra second or third round pick in the process or a 2027 draft pick. Next year's draft class is supposed to be phenomenal. You can load up with draft picks in 2027. Let's say Shuck works out. Great. You get a lot of really good second and third round picks to help this team stay young and stay cheap, essentially. Let's say Shuck doesn't work out. If Shuck doesn't work out and things look bad, it's a very strong quarterback class. And the more capital you have in 27, the better. So I love the idea of trading down. I would love the idea of trading back to, like, let's say the Bills think that they're one player away and Jordan Tice isn't available at 8 and the Saints would trade back to the Bills pick and get an extra first rounder next year. Obviously the risk at that point is you're getting a late 20s pick this year and then next year that Bills pick might also be a late 20s pick. So you lose pick 8 for two late round first round picks, but again, you don't have to look at the pick number and you can look at the capital that it brings. A first round pick to trade up in a draft. Mickey Loomis would never take that opportunity and just laugh at it, right? He 100% would love the ability to trade up in next year's draft if the opportunity came. Unfortunately, that would require trading down in this draft class, which I just don't see happening. But again, as always, I want to know what you think. If the Saints do end up trading up to pick 3, how long is it going to take for you to convince yourself that it was the right move? I think it would take me quite a while, probably into training camp, hoping that whoever they took at pick 3 finally starts looking looking like they've earned it. But I definitely think during draft day, if they would do that, I would definitely be upset, and that's an understatement. So, um, who knows though? I mean, I'm not an expert. I've had my draft takes that have worked out. Those are few and far between. Most of my draft takes are wrong. Again, I'm not a scout. I'm just a fan of the game. I do the eye test and I hope for the best. All right, guys, real quick, looking into the 2026 season, I kind of want to just go over some of the position groups who I think are pretty stacked, and I wouldn't be surprised to see the Saints not address whatsoever in the draft because of it. You can always go with depth. There's a couple picks here or a couple positions that we've talked about previously that I think could use a bit of an upgrade. But again, if we're going off of depth at these position groups, in my opinion, the top 3 position groups are O-line, running back, and tight end. What you notice there is no defensive position group that I feel confident in. I think cornerback right now, you have 2 people who can be very good cornerback twos. Safety, you have Sanker, who was good in his first year. Second year slumps do happen, so I'm curious to see what happens with him. Reed came in and was a little bit disappointing, in my opinion, to start the year, but he really turned it on towards the end of the year. And Blackman, when he's healthy, is great. He was actually very good when he was healthy last year, but he's got to stay healthy. So I'm not saying safety can't make this list, but that was the closest one to making the list. The linebacker room, you have Caden Ellis replacing Demario Davis, and I do like Pete Werner, but again, if you take the Homer glasses off, Stutzman is not somebody that you can come in and say he's going to be a starter. He's got the makeup, he's got the build, He's got the attitude, and I really like the player. But realistically, he didn't play enough last year to show anybody that he should be the starter or considered a starter or even someone who is irreplaceable. So linebacker definitely has some potential. Stalbert as well, very good potential with him. And then the D line, again, very top heavy. I think Chase Young is good. Outside of that though, Granderson, I love him as a number three, but you would love to get a number two. And Cam Jordan again as a number three and number four situational guy. So I think you'd really need to get somebody there at the edge position to fill out to really feel comfortable with that edge group. Defensive tackle, you got Brzee. I think Godshaw is on under contract. He's coming back. Shepard, Ridgeway. So you have good players, but you could definitely get better. On the offensive side, though, again, the top three that I'm talking about here, offensive line, I think you feel comfortable with the starters. Ruiz really being the only question mark out of all the starters. But then you got Radens as a backup, Torricelli Simpkins, Nick Saldiveri, and Asim Richards, who all played last year. And I think Richards played relatively okay. I think Simpkins, when he was in, he had his moments. And Radens played very well. You're very happy to have him as a backup. I don't think you want him as your full-time starter, but you are very happy to have him as your backup. Um, Backup center is the part where you're a little concerned. Maybe Ruiz does slot in as backup center if he gets picked. Or I'm sorry, if Eric McCoy gets hurt and no center gets picked in the draft. Outside of that, I think you're pretty happy with the depth that you have, and if you have injuries, as long as they're not long term, I think you feel really good about the O-line. Running back is again another position that overall got a huge upgrade. Achane coming in here is the right move for this team to make. Kamara is currently on the roster, so yeah, you have to include him there. And then Kendre Miller as well, if he can stay healthy. If those are your three running backs heading into the season, and all three stay healthy, you might have one of the best running back rooms in the league. Devin Neal showed a lot of promise last year before he was hurt. Surprisingly good in pass protection. I was very impressed with him in his pass protection last year. Whenever Kamara was in, and it was Neal and Kamara split in the backfield, there were times where Neal was the more trusted guy in pass protection, which says a lot about what he was doing. And then Audric Estime and Ty Chandler as well, filling out the running back room. Ty Chandler may just be a returner. Trick play guy. He's fast. He's very good with the ball in his hands, but definitely could do worse at the running back position. And then finally, tight end. I know I've said it a few times. I love the Ohio State tight end in this draft, and that's the guy who I want the Saints to get in the third round more than anybody. But you do have Juwan Johnson and Noah Fant, and you could do a lot worse. Teams are doing a lot worse than both of those guys. So I am very comfortable with the tight end room in general. And then you have Matoval as your third string tight end as well. He's somebody who you have a lot of faith in as a third string guy. Could do a lot worse, but you definitely can upgrade at that position. So I would take the Ohio State tight end in a heartbeat, get him on this roster, let him develop behind Fant and behind Juwan Johnson, and just see this kid's potential grow and grow. I really think he's a good tight end. Whoever gets him is going to get a starter. At least that's my opinion. Again, I watched a lot of Ohio State games, so when I was watching those games, to me, he was more of a difference maker on a regular basis than he gets credit for. He's not, the number one guy, but I do think he had a phenomenal, phenomenal year. And he's someone who I'm excited to watch in the NFL. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, press that subscribe button, give us a like, and share it with your friends. And as always, we will catch you next time.